Welcome to the session where we're focusing on a particular aspect of diversity and inclusion, and particularly around how we deal positively with the biases that we all have and how those can lead to what we call microaggressions in the workplace. So the first thing I would like to do is I'm going to split you into groups, and I'd like you to have a conversation about some of the words that we use around this. So the two words that are sort of quite building blocks on this are stereotypes and bias, often known as unconscious bias. So I'd like you and your groups to talk about what you think those words are. How do you think they link to equality, diversity and inclusion? And also, what challenges have you had or do you anticipate in dealing with these in the workplace? And I'll give you 10 minutes in your groups to have a conversation around that and to get to know each other a little bit. And then we'll come back and we'll have a discussion as a whole group and just feedback on some of the key points from your discussion. What are some key thoughts from you in terms of what are stereotypes?
White van man.
So white van man is a type of stereotype. Absolutely, yeah. Okay.
Often groups or people that people think it's okay to make jokes about, or comedians do. So, you could have sort of Essex girls and blondes and all sorts like that you can actually talk about.
Exactly. So a stereotype is like a fixed generalization, or what happens is when you attribute to one person the assumed characteristics of the group to which they belong. So whether that's to do with their ethnicity, so all Italians like pasta, for example, whether that's to do with their hobbies, someone's a computer geek, so they must therefore be boring. Even the word geek in itself is a stereotype, isn't it? So it hasn't got to apply to kind of the main characteristics we talk about in equality legislation. It can be any type of things. It can be homeless people, it can be estate agents, it can be anything. I bet how many of you can quickly come up with some stereotypes around estate agents. So that's the stereotypes. What about the unconscious bias? What do we think about that?
Yeah, it's something that you just don't know is there, is kind of things that may be from your childhood or the way that you grew up that have kind of been sort of impressed in your memory, that you kind of don't really think a stereotype, so you don't think you're being horrible about a certain group of people, but it's just that kind of underlying little pattern.
Yeah,
you can be unbiased towards and unbiased against as well, I think, can't you?
Absolutely, yeah. So your bias can be an affinity towards a person or a group, so a particular person because you think they're like you, or they've got a particular attribute that you see positively, or it can be that can put you against that person. But they're quite linked, because actually what happens is the way we get bias is where our brains have to make really quick judgments, and we get loads and loads of information coming at us, and so we have to make these quick judgments about people or situations unconsciously. So we haven't got the brain power to absorb all of that, so we make those decisions unconsciously. And interestingly, the more stressed we are, the more we rely on our biases and our stereotypes, which you can imagine in the current environment is a big thing for a lot of people. And they affect our perceptions we have of ourselves, the perceptions we have of other people, the actions and decisions that we make in all sorts of aspects of our life. And bias has a really important process. So part of it is that idea of it recognizes the patterns. It sees this and it thinks this, a bit like a shortcut on a computer, if you like. Very, very similar way of doing it from that. And that's fine because it saves us time. But the issue comes when we allow that to stop us from looking beyond that with people. So we make our decisions based on this without testing out whether actually that is the case for the individual, or whether those biases make us act in a, as Lizzie said, in a negative way to people sometimes. But the interesting thing is we all have biases. It is natural the way that our brain works. There's too much information, so it wants to make it easier for us. It's part of that kind of social identity. So I belong or I don't belong to that group. And interestingly, it's the safety factor that's really important. So when we think about stereotypes, we often go for the negatives. So you think about a particular group, like estate agents, for example, I just mentioned, we always come up with the negative stereotypes first. And that's because one of those purposes is to prevent us from being put in danger. So actually we need to look at the negatives first, and then we come round to the others. The Neuro Leadership Institute said, if you have a brain, you are biased. So for me, that's we all have them. We're not bad people for having them, but actually we need to start making them more conscious and recognizing when they are causing us to behave in a way that's not appropriate, or that is going to have a negative impact on another human being. Just to prove how easy it is to give into your stereotypes, what I'm going to do is going to get you to do a little exercise here. How many of you ever watched a program Through the Keyhole?
Oh,
yeah.
And they used to say at the end of it, who would live in a house like this? In this situation, we want to say, who would drive a car like this? So what I'm going to do is split you into groups again. And I'm going to ask you to look at one of these each and think about, so, you know, what is the type of person that would drive the car towing the caravan? What's the type of person that would be driving a lorry, that would be driving kind of your sporty car or your Chelsea tractor? And to create a little bit of a personality for them. So you're not going to answer all of these, but give them a name. What's their name, their age, their job? What's their social or educational background? What's their personality traits? What's kind of their personal life like, their hobbies, their routines, their hopes, their fears? Just kind of create a little bit of a character for someone and have a little bit of fun with that. And just recognizing, you know, we're not hurting anyone here. We're just doing it to show how easy it is to have those stereotypes. So I don't want us to be, for this one, thinking about, I really shouldn't say that. Just give in to what instantly comes to mind before your filters stop you and say, I shouldn't say that. Okay. So I'll split you into groups now. What about our top right one? What's the name of the person who might be driving that?
Jason.
Jason. How old do we think Jason is, V?
22.
22. Okay, young lad. Yeah. What's Jason's hobbies?
Hasn't really got any except for driving his car.
Hanging out in car parks with other young lads. Hanging out in McDonald's car parks.
Having a drink, was that, Lizzie? Yeah. Okay. Pure
on the computer though as well. He's a bit of a gamer.
He's addicted to Fortnite, and he'll be on it until 3 every morning.
Yeah. Okay.
And what about the Jungle or Garage or music like that? Because that's what we normally do when we all get together about 8 o'clock at night with those.
And having it very loud with the windows open in the car. Yeah,
we love it.
You can't actually sit on the back seats because it's full of speakers.
But they do have to be Sony speakers, by the way, because there's no point, getting cheap rubbish.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pioneer.
So how easy was it to come up with those stereotypes?
Too easy.
It is scarily easy, isn't it, really, to come up with them? And that's the thing, to show we all have them, even if we know in our conscious brain that they're not appropriate. So if we met someone driving a caravan, what's the likelihood that all of those stereotypical attributes would apply to that person?
No, probably not very likely.
No,
really.
Exactly. It's not maybe one or two.
It's kind of, yeah.
But the point I want to make is that this is normal. This is what we all do, and quite often what we end up doing is demonizing people's biases and stereotypes and saying you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't have this, and make people feel bad about themselves or make them feel defensive. But for me, the real starting point is it's a natural thing to have, and you can see how easily it's just literally just beneath the surface. It's so easy. But what we want to do is
somewhere, surely, so there must be a grain of truth somewhere.
Well, it is, and that's the thing, is because if you look, there will be some people, so that it will have come from some information, but the interesting bit is quite often it might not always have come from the information you've observed yourself from people of that group. It might be from what you've got from your parents and their existing stereotypes. So you will have got it from somewhere.
Also media.
And media, absolutely. Media is huge for that type of thing, Andrew. Yeah, it's a really, really good point. What we actually find is what goes under the radar quite often is what we call microaggressions. And these are every day, and they can be verbal or non-verbal, and they're sort of slights or snubs. Basically, it's because someone belongs to a particular group and they're targeted at that person. But for example, a lot of people think it's not really an issue. It's not really discrimination. So someone just, sort of saying a little joke about someone, oh, well, you're Irish, aren't you? So, you must be a bit thick. It's those kind of things. They say, well, I'm just joking. It's just banter. Office banter is a really interesting thing when it comes to microaggression. People pass it off as just joking. And often the person who makes the microaggressions, they don't realize they've offended someone. They do actually think it's just a bit of a joke in a lot of cases. But people don't feel comfortable calling people out and saying, hang on a second, that I didn't really like it when you said that. You might not have realized it, but actually I was quite offended by that. And I've had people telling me this for years, and it would be really nice if someone I work closely with didn't say that. But people don't tend to do that unless there's the culture within the organization that it's okay to speak out. And sometimes it's about actually you speaking out for other people. If someone feels not able to do it themselves, if you notice someone else being treated that way, it's saying, hang on a second, have you realized what you said there? I'm sure you've probably come across a few of those as well. Any ones that the people are particularly familiar with of that kind of thing?
I've often had, you don't look Jewish.
Yeah. I've often had, oh, you've got red hair, I bet you've got a temper. Oh yeah, I've got that one.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always hearing now from people this business about where are you really from? I mean, somebody did that to my daughter the other day, and actually asked her where she's really from, and they asked my son that as well. And no, I mean, where are you really from?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So what we want to do now is to do a little bit of an activity where we kind of do spot the bias. So we're going to do a very short scene with Maxine, Andrew, Karen and I, and we're going to play a team. And anyone apart from the four of us, if you can turn your cameras off and also your mics briefly. And then I'm going to come back and ask you some questions about this once we've actually finished it. We're just going to introduce you to a short team meeting. And before we do that, each of the team are going to give you a very brief introductions to themselves, and then we're going to play a very short scene.
I'm Marcy, director of Big Books. I get results and I don't take any nonsense.
Madam, operations manager. I guess people see me as yesterday's man, but I just don't like taking risks or changing things when we don't need to.
Hi, I'm Steph. I'm the sales manager. I really love working with Marcy. We see eye to eye on everything. Well, most work-related things anyway.
I'm Kelly, Marcy's secretary. I really want to get on in the company, and I come in every morning, fired up, ready to make a contribution. But no one really ever listens to my views. It's a little bit frustrating. Okay, so has everyone got the agenda and the briefing notes?
Yes, my dear, very organised as usual. Now, we're going to need someone to scribe on the flip chart for this meeting. You'll do that, won't you, Kelly? As you won't be contributing to the discussion, and you do have the loveliest handwriting.
Adam, I think Kelly's capable of a lot more than that.
Typical, all the girls sticking together, or do you have some special relationship we don't know about?
Really, Adam? I hope you're not insinuating something queer's going on here. I really don't need that sort of image just after my breakfast. We're all quite normal here, aren't we, girls?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so we're here to talk about working flexible hours, including evenings and weekends. Now, how are we going to sell this to the staff?
Well, I think that what we should actually...
You always have such good ideas. What are you thinking?
Well, I think if the company says we need to do it, then staff just need to get on with it and do it. I mean, it's not hard, is it?
Good point. Okay, so who here has any problem with this?
Well, I think we need to be careful as we are changing the psychological contract staff have with the company, and also I wouldn't be able to as I have other responsibilities, evenings and weekends.
Oh, you're too busy counting your money piles, eh? Okay. No, seriously though. Anyone that didn't fight in the bloody Boer War have any problems here?
Well, I mean, I was thinking that we could get more buy-in if we just,
That's great. Right. Well, let's move on to the next item. Okay.
So if we can unmute now, and what I'd like sort of those of you that obviously weren't in the session to say is what were the key microaggressions or biases that you noticed in that very, very short conversation there?
I get the impression with Andrew's character that it's probably women in general are sort of to be patted on the head and make a cup of tea for him.
Yeah, could be women, or it could be the role. So interestingly, in my early days as a secretary, when my boss started to develop me, we had a big issue that one of the managers, who had other female managers, but whenever I started speaking, he would kind of go, and for him it was secretaries. So actually it wasn't the gender specifically, it was a smaller version of a secretary should be seen and not heard. Yeah, what else did we see?
Oh, there was a lot of Ochve and Boer Wars and, well, that's Marcy from left to centre, really. I think.
Yeah. So Marcy definitely, the sort of, Andrew around the sort of the being Jewish and being old. So yesterday's man and all of that. Yeah. So how might it feel to be on the receiving end of that type of microaggression? So either thinking about what happened to the characters there, or when you've been on the receiving end of microaggressions, how does it feel to be on the receiving end?
It's quite awkward because if the person doing it is in a position of authority, it can be difficult to challenge it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It is, I feel that sort of discomfort. It is a difficult thing to be able to say to somebody, I think you've just done this to me, when somebody will say, I don't understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you'd say that.
You know, what might be behind it? And for me, this is when we start to move forward, is thinking about what might be behind it. Maybe they do just think it's a joke. Maybe that's the language their parents have used for years.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not aware of this bias that they've got. Maybe there is actually something there and they have got a bias that they need to be re-educated about.
Or worse still, they actually believe it.
Yeah. Well, this is it.
They actually believe it.
Chief has just said he doesn't want any more women on the committee because they talk too much and make all the meetings carry on too long. He only said it this morning or last night. The Tokyo Olympics chief is not, so far, is not resigning. As far as he's concerned, if there are more women on the meetings, they will go on longer because they talk too long.
Yeah.
Where do you go from there?
Yeah.
He's not resigning.
Yeah.
So now what?
As individuals in an organisation, you're not necessarily expected to be sorting out, sort of institutionalised bigotry about one particular area. But as an employee, what you can do is absolutely pick up where someone is. Bless you, Andrew. What you can do is you can pick up if someone is doing something that is obviously discriminatory against the Equality Act, but also you can have a positive conversation with someone around this type of stuff. It's not comfortable, but you're right, unless someone tells that person, they might not realize. They may have been saying that forever and no one's ever said anything. They think it's perfectly acceptable. So it is that having that courage to say it, but also having some techniques.
And so there was a particular time, which I think, Lottie, you might have been there at that particular moment, where we had a group of people from a particular service, and there was lots of banter going backwards and forwards, this, that and the other. And this person said, you know what, it's never been okay for you to say that. I've never enjoyed you saying that. And I've told you, but you just don't listen to me. And he said, yeah, but we've always said it. Ever since we've been kids, we've always said it. It was all right then. So why isn't it now? And the lady quite rightly turned around and said, it's never been okay. And it's not okay now. And I find it really offensive. And then somebody else who was sitting next to her said, it doesn't affect me, but it does when you say those things, because I'm not directly affected because you're not saying it at me, but I'm sitting next to her and I feel affected by what you're saying.
So what we're going to do now is basically Steph has got well and truly fed up now with all of these things that Marcy keeps saying, and it's been building up and building up and building up, which quite often happens with people. It keeps going on and they get to a point, it's like, do you know what, I can't take this anymore. Don't care if I'm going to lose my job. I cannot let her make these kind of comments about me. And so I'm going to go and try and deal with this situation. And speak to Marcy about how unacceptable I consider her language to be. And my objective is to really get her to stop doing it. But as you know, people, when you're getting angry and emotional about things, you won't always do it well. So what I would like you to do is something we call forum theatre. So if you can all be unmuted, and at any point you hear or see me doing or saying something that you think is really not helpful to me getting a good result with Marcy, if you can shout stop, let me know what the action was that I did that you don't think was working very well, and then give me something else to do instead. And then I'll start at that point and carry on till hopefully we can come to a reasonable solution. Okay, so make sure you're unmuted so you're ready to jump in at any point. Okay. Marcy, I'd like to have a word with you, please.
Stop.
Right.
Your tone of voice was a little bit cross-confrontational, which you are, but you probably need to phrase it and sound slightly different, a little more conciliatory.
Okay, a little more conciliatory.
If you go in with that level of aggression, if she's having a bad day as well, then you'll be at it in no time.
Okay, right. I am feeling that.
Maybe start it off with sorry to interrupt you, but could we? It's important. Could we please have a quick chat?
So how do I not? Because I am angry. So it's really hard to not show that I'm angry.
So
talk a little bit slower.
Lower your voice, lower the tone of your voice straight away. Take a great big deep breath and slow down. So everything that you're going to say it more slowly and in a lower tone of voice. Start in a much lower tone of voice so it will sound like you're talking in your boots to you, but not to the rest of us.
Okay, and Lizzie's just said try and negotiate a good time for you both. Okay. Marcy, I need to speak to you. Is now a good time?
Yes, it is.
Right. Well, I'm really not very happy by some of the comments that you've been making recently. Your sort of comments about not being queer here.
Stop. You're getting faster and faster and faster immediately.
And I also think, explain that this is something that you've been feeling for a while, and that the last meeting was kind of the final straw, so it doesn't kind of bam straight into her.
Okay. So I've been feeling uncomfortable for quite some time about some of the language that you use in our meetings. I know you call it banter, but it's been getting to me for quite a while, and to be honest, just the comments you made when you came into that meeting earlier today, they were just the final straw, really, to be honest, Marcy. So I just really need to speak to you because I'm just really not happy with that language, and I need it to stop now.
Well, I can hear that you're unhappy. And you said my language. What in particular?
Well, it's just all these little kind of jibes about sexuality, about being queer and not needing to see that, and we're all normal here. I am normal. The fact that I happen to have a girlfriend and not a boyfriend, you didn't know that, did you? That doesn't mean that I'm not normal.
Well, if you had said that before, I'd never made jokes about being queer. I wouldn't have done it if I'd known.
Stop. I would personally say how it does make you feel.
Okay. So, when you say things like that, it might not be your intention, but it actually makes me feel really excluded, really awkward, really hurt. That I kind of feel like I can't be who I am. I feel like I'm trying to hide a real huge part of who I am and what's important to me. And I want to have a good relationship with you as my boss. And on other areas we get on really well, but this kind of really drives a wedge between us. I'm just really interested as to why you would say those kind of things when we get on so well.
I suppose, yes, it's a good question. If I'm honest with you, I thought nothing of it. I just thought it was a light joke. And I mean, you must, as you've already said, we get on well. You're skilled, you're professional. I don't have any problems with you. I didn't know or didn't realize that you had a partner. I meant nothing by it. So you must see I like you, and that's got nothing to do with you being gay. That's to do with you being you.
Is it possible that you can stop using some of that language? And it's not just to me. It's that banter generally. I mean, was it you were talking to Adam earlier on as well about what was that oy vey comment and things and I know he really struggles with that, but he won't speak up. I will, but people don't. Some of these things that if you're not used to to people saying that to you. You know, it's you don't always realise, but it's not banter. It's quite hurtful.
So why don't people say something then?
Because we're scared, because you're our boss. We don't know how you're going to react to things, because we've had lots of other people say it to us in our lives, and we've got used to it, but it doesn't mean we like it. And I really, you know, we don't want to have that. We've got a really good team with lots of potential here. And
I agree. Yes.
And, you know, I just think maybe if we can maybe have a bit of an open conversation with each other and talk about, you know, how we can move forward from here.
Well, I think the beginning of this is a good and honest discussion. And I'm thank you for coming to me and saying something. You know, it's not my intention to make people feel uncomfortable or undermine people. I mean, the people I'm surrounded with are skilled and they're good people. And I want a good working atmosphere. I think moving forward, we need to have a meeting all together to talk about this.
Yeah.
I thank you for voicing it for yourself individually, but as you're saying, there are other people who are feeling this and they're scared of me, and I don't want people to be scared of me.
That's really good to hear. Thank you.
So I think a meeting, definitely. Let's schedule it. Let's do this.
Yeah, and sorry, I kind of came storming in a little bit here, but you know, it's one of those things I kind of built up, and I probably should have said something sooner. But I'm really glad I have, and I feel much better for saying that. And thank you for taking it on board. And I really look forward to having a meeting with everyone to have a proper chat about how we work together. So what do you think, folks?
I found that very moving.
Well, a tissue.
Oh yeah, almost.
It's just a really nice, honest, you know, open conversation. And you know, kind of when you were saying sort of about, oh, you know, it just needs to really stop. I kind of thought about saying stop, thinking, oh, that, you know, probably a bit step too far, you know, for the minute she might just do this, that and the other. She won't stop first thing. But I thought, well, no, let's give her a chance. Give Marcy a chance. And actually the way that then the conversation progressed had really great outcomes, and the desired outcomes that you know.
Yeah, as Lizzie said, Marcy did look suitably contrite. Thank you, Marcy. So, Marcy, what was your thought on being on the receiving end of that?
It sort of wrong-footed me. What you realise is you forget the power you have. You forget the fact that power allows you to say and do as you please. You forget that no one will dare ever question anything you say and do.
Yeah.
And you then believe that what you say is fine because no one has ever said anything to you before.
Yeah.
I felt embarrassed that the people and my colleagues that were working with me actually felt like that about me. When I heard the word scared, that was quite loaded.
Yeah.
And that question made me question myself as a boss. What kind of a boss generates fear? You know, we want a decent working atmosphere where people feel equal and respected. And I think I felt quite shabby as a boss, really, and quite embarrassed.
Yeah, and I think that the difference is between, you know, if I'm sort of coming at you saying, how dare you say that, you shouldn't be saying that, it's wrong, it's probably more likely to make you defensive than as I was going to go before everyone so kindly stopped me and got me to slow down. But actually going and saying, look, actually, I'm feeling really uncomfortable. I'm not being aggressive. I'm just letting you know that that's how it is for me. That's how I feel. And that's the concerns that I've got. Makes it possibly easier to take.
I think so, because what you're dealing with there are your feelings, and I can't argue with that.
I'd like to give a personal example of someone aligning with me that made a massive difference in my life. I was at London Bridge Station, and we all got off the train. There was a line of people queuing to pay their tickets and carry on with their journey. 2 or 3 people paid in front of me. I got up to the window. I was about to hand over my money, and the guard came over to me and said, "You have to pay a penalty fare." I was like, why do I have to pay a penalty fare? People and we're getting into this conversation. A couple of other people paid behind me and went on their way. Whilst we were in the middle of this conversation, the guard stopped talking to me, went back over to the queue and said to somebody else, "You have to pay a penalty fare." The other person that he picked out said, "You've pulled out the 2 black people in the queue." I was like, oh my gosh, you have, what's going on here? So both of us were involved in this conversation with the guard and what appeared to be his racist behavior. And whilst we were talking, a white gentleman came up behind us and said to the guard, if these two have to pay a penalty fare, shouldn't I as well? The guard just started twitching and going, blah, 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 blah. And basically all three of us went on our way. It was a sentence, but it made a massive, massive difference to both of our lives that day. And it was it meant a lot, it did a lot, but it didn't take a lot.
Coming back from your groups now then, folks, just one or two of you to share, what's the key thing that came out for you from this session?
That sometimes we're not even aware of the biases we have.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. Yeah.
We can actually do something about other people's as well if we just, you can quietly speak up and, help others if you witness it. It doesn't have to be a frightening situation to do that.
So from that, then moving on to the next one, what are some things you can do to help deal more positively with those biases and microaggressions in the workplace?
I think it's really important to show support for the people you work with by calling it out. Otherwise, they're going to feel ignored, sidelined, and not heard.
And also, I think for me as well, is it combines those 2 points really, is actually do a little self-check. How often do I make a flippant remark that I don't think is offensive? I think it's all very well that we're now saying, oh, when you see it happen, but are we always 100% innocent ourselves? And I definitely, whenever I do this, I think, oh, I maybe should check that I don't make funny comments which actually aren't funny.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, actually, isn't it? So bearing sort of that in mind, then, what's just a couple of you? What's an action that you're going to take, a personal commitment that you're going to make?
Definitely be more confident in sort of in coming forward, and as Andrew just said, kind of standing up for, kind of making sure that you actually are making other people aware that it is happening.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. One more from someone else that hasn't spoken.
I think be willing to challenge something if you see it happening.
Yeah.
Rather than just letting it pass.
Okay. Lovely. Thank you very much.
Let's have some fun with an online poll first. Which of these is a form of discrimination? Okay, so let's have a look at what the results are. So which of these is a form of discrimination? So A was treating someone with a protected characteristic less favourably than others. So 50% of you, funnily enough, you got it right. That is looking at direct discrimination. So in actual fact, when we're looking at these different types of discrimination, there's actually a few different levels. So the first one is looking at our direct, that's what the legislation does talk about. So B, when we're talking about putting rules or arrangements in place that apply to everyone, but that puts someone with a protected characteristic at an unfair disadvantage, those 67% of you that said that, you also got it right. That's the indirect one. So I think you can see where I'm going now here with the theme, rather than just thinking, well, what's actually the right answer and what's the wrong answer? It's actually looking at the different forms of discrimination. So see, when we look at unwanted behaviour linked to a protective characteristic that violates someone's dignity or creates an offensive environment for them, that's looking at harassment. So again, that comes under that discrimination part of the legislation. So 67% of you got that one right as well. And then D, treating someone unfairly because they've complained about discrimination or harassment, actually comes under victimization. So if you had put all of them, you would have got all of them right, but you wouldn't know that because of the different forms of discrimination. Okay. So how does that sound to everybody? How did you feel about that particular question?
I did wonder if it was all of them. But then I thought, well, they felt like they covered each other as well a little bit.
Yeah.
So But yeah, when you read them out and explained it, you could see how they were in fact different for each one. So
yeah, and it's amazing because it almost different people think and know different things also about discrimination. So some people might pick up on other things. So yeah, and it's interesting to have all of those
also
different.
Makes you wonder how often the indirect one, like putting rules in place for something. I mean, how easy is that to actually commit indirect discrimination? Because you just think, oh well, no, we're not allowed to do this now, or everybody has to do this. You don't actually always then think in inclusivity. You just put out a rule that makes sense, and you don't actually think it all the way through.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean,
and sometimes
people are probably guilty of B.
Yeah, absolutely. And most of the time no one's going to sit there and go, hang on a minute, Tracy said, now what I've just said was coming under indirect, or was it direct? It's not about, when we're talking about legislation, it's not trying to really look into Equal Opportunities Act 2010 and all of that. It's actually looking at what's behind it and what we can do about it. And that for me is the really fundamental part. Yes, we can go online. Yes, we can read all of the legislation, which does take quite a long time, I'll tell you that, especially when they bring out new legislations. It's brilliant because it's a little bit more condensed, but it's still, you need to go through it. But it's the understanding that's behind it that is the most important part, and how we can share the knowledge with each other. And that to me is really, really valuable. I'm just going to get you to do another 2 questions. So name all the protective characteristics. So let me get my little pen out. So you can just shout these out. You don't need to type them into the chat. Let's just shout them out, because I prefer to talk to you, unless you're someone that can't shout out because your microphone's not working. So please put that in chat, and then I'll shout for you.
Gender.
Yeah. Pardeep said age on chat. So yeah.
So disability. Yeah, brilliant.
Ethnicity.
Yeah.
Is and pregnancy one? Is
pregnancy? Yeah.
Religion,
great.
Faith.
Faith. Oh, that's interesting. Faith.
Yeah. But it's all of those sorts of things. So age as well, which is one of those big things that we don't always think about. Sometimes, I don't know about you, I've always done it where, the way I've been brought up, you'd be always so polite to your elders and things like that. So, if someone comes to the door, I'm the Tesco delivery man, for example, and I go, hello, young man, how are you today? And I just think, what a nice thing I'm saying. But actually, because of his age, that could come across as being quite offensive because he's of an older generation. And that links back to when we were talking about direct and indirect discrimination.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly, I could be discriminating against him, even though I'm being really nice about it. I'm actually not. So I try and curb that as much as I want to when I say it. So now all I do is I just go, and how are you today? And I ask them their name. So those are the other ones. So we've got race, age, gender, faith, disability, pregnancy and maternity, gender reassignment, sexual orientation, and then marriage and civil partnership.
There's a lot more in there than I thought there were, actually.
Yeah. So those are the 9, rather than me putting up their name, all 9 of them, because then people go, oh my God, there's 9 of them. Oh gosh. How many more?
Why would gender and gender reassignment not just be gender?
Because actually under the law at the moment, because when you look at the Equal Opportunities Act, it actually combines all of the acts from early 70s up until 2010 and any of the other legislation after that. So you've got the gender reassignment, which was 2004, but you've also got all of the other race and age and gender ones that came out in the late 70s. Where they talked about they've got race ones, which I think was 76, and there was a gender one, because obviously if you think about gender from an equal pay perspective, the equal pay that we've been championing for the last couple of years, we're waiting. But it's that sort of thing. When you're coming under these 9 characteristics, it's really important from the discrimination side of things. So the last question is definitions. How would you define these 4 definitions? So looking at diversity, equality, equity, and then inclusion. So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, and what I'd like you to do is diversity. I'd like room 1 to do diversity, room 2 to do equality. Welcome back. Hope you've enjoyed your time away.
It was interesting seeing what everyone was coming up with. Yeah.
Good. I think it's always great when you go into breakout rooms that you can then, especially if there's only 3 or 4 of you, and not feel embarrassed about what you might say in a larger group. Because then sometimes when you're in a large group, people don't want to talk, and obviously if you haven't got the capacity from a microphone perspective, so you're having to use chat, sometimes it just gives you a little bit more, oh, I can really say how I feel, and I didn't like it when Tracy said this, or I didn't get when Tracy said that. So I would like to advocate, if there's something that we've gone through already or anything that Sharon's gone through, then please feel free to ask us questions throughout, or at the end of the session if you want to stay behind. Oh, that sounds very school marmy, doesn't it? But if you do want to stay behind, more than happy to answer any questions that you may feel you don't want to ask while there's people around. Please feel free to, because as I say, very passionate about this particular subject, as you might have guessed. So let's go through what some of the answers could be. So thinking about yourself. But for me, it's really finding out, well, what does it mean to you personally? So these are just some of the definitions that we talk about. So diversity refers to, as I've put it on the screen for you, to demographic differences of a particular group. So often a team or an organizational level. So it could be looking at the diversity under the characteristics, so the protected characteristics. So we just talked about some of those. So looking at age, looking at disability, gender reassignment, any of those characteristics when it comes under diversity. Equality, looking at the equal rights and opportunities. So when the Equal Opportunities Act 2010 came in, there was so many different acts, as Lotta asked the question earlier on, that come into play. So it's starting to amalgamate all of those, because we want to be seen to be fair to everybody, and so we don't discriminate, hence why there's those 9 characteristics. And there may well be in the next sort of 10 to 15 years that there might be more characteristics. So you know, for example, where you're from in the UK. So at the moment, a lot of people talk about it from a racial perspective, but it's also from a different county perspective. So if you're from Liverpool, what do you think about people that come from Manchester? Or what about us Southerners? What are we like when we go up north? And it's all those sorts of things that may come into play, because there's a lot of people that are championing those to come under the legislation or protected characteristics, because it doesn't at the moment for a nationality.
I was going to just say, actually, back to the equality and more protected characteristics. Wouldn't it be really nice if actually they were less, because we didn't have to?
Yes, absolutely.
That's a bit rose tinted of me.
No.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, why do these people? Why are we seeing the difference? And that's the thing, isn't it? It's such a big topic, but yeah,
it is. It is very much so. But then when we look at equity, it recognises that treating everyone equally has shortcomings when playing a field is not level. So the approach, everyone should not be treated the same. As I was saying throughout this bit, it's actually looking at the person, because we've all got different personalities, we've all got wants and needs, we've all got different values, cultures, and it's just looking at that person, really. And then inclusion, often defined as extent to which everyone at work, regardless of their background, identity or circumstances, making them feel valued, feeling that respect, and that they can succeed at work as well. So it is those 4 different areas. Yes, they can be defined, but the overall of it is, what does it mean to you? And most importantly, how are you dealing with that on a day-to-day basis?